And now we have the first international signing of the Jason Hernandez era. The only guy who's been in the rumor mill for Toronto FC the past week, Cassius Mailula. The South African international who played for the Mamelodi Sundowns last season is joining Toronto FC on a contract through to 2026 with a team option for 2027. Mailula is a very exciting young player, 22-year-old South African international. He burst onto the pro scene this past season at the Mamelodi Sundowns, becoming their top scorer in all competitions, scoring 16 goals this past season in 32 competitive appearances, which is a goal every 2 games. Now, despite that, he is not a pure number 9 striker. He's a little smaller than your typical number 9. He's a guy who he can play in the midfield, he can play on the wing, he can play up top in the number 9 position. He's a good utility player and has decent professional experience leading the Mamelodi Sundowns in goals as they won the top flight of South African football this past year. And on top of that, because of his appearances in the South African League, he earned his first 2 appearances for the South African national team back in March in their Africa Cup of Nations qualifiers. So a pretty decent player coming into Toronto FC, unproven at the MLS level, yes, but taking up a U22 initiative spot to bring him in, he is an exciting young talent who could really help this team going forward. And as we all know, Toronto FC is a team that needs goals. This is a guy who, even though he's playing a lower tier league this past year, has a track record of scoring goals. But this is exactly the type of signing that we need. A guy who is a guy for the future and not just quick fix, bring him in, he's only good if we're going for this season type of player. No, Mailula is a 22-year-old player. He's a guy who we've signed to a multi-year deal, a guy who's hopefully going to be here for a while and be a part of us building back up to where we were. He is a very talented young player, a guy who I think most teams in MLS would want, and I think that Toronto FC gets a very good pickup here. He could falter out, the development could falter, and he could never be a great player in MLS, but he's a guy who, like, I'm not worried about taking a chance on him. I think he's a player that has potential to be a very, very useful asset in Major League Soccer. Not a sure thing by any means, but he has a lot of potential there, and so that's the type of guys that we need right now. Those are the type of guys that, like, we need guys with high potentials. We need guys who are still getting better, and he just checks all those boxes off, and on top of that, he's a guy who we know can score goals. Now, of course, there's always the question of coming into this current Toronto FC team, which is a disaster. Will he be able to keep the mental going forward for the remainder of the season? Because, like, I already warned about bringing in young guys for the remainder of this season because of how their mental state might be affected playing on this Toronto FC team that's all but given up. But I think that if it's clear that this is a build to the future move and that, like, MLS is a step up for this player and that TFC next season is going to be building towards being a better team, it shouldn't be that big of a deal. He's going to help you build as you help him build in his career. He's going to help Toronto FC build back up to where they were as Toronto FC helps him develop in his own career as he can use MLS as a stepping stone to better and brighter things. So overall, it's a move that I quite like. I think Mailula has great potential to be a very solid player in MLS. He's exactly the type of player that Toronto FC needs right now. Young international talent. He's just fits all the boxes of what we need right now. My only downside is that we don't have the roster spots and the international roster spots to bring in more players like him, but this right now is a good start. So that does it for this video. As always, if you like it, hit like. If you want to see more of my stuff, hit subscribe. Follow me on Twitter. Link is down below in the description, and I will see you next time.